Absolutely.
Because there's a fib, I think, being told. Would you say that's fair from Bryan Callen?
Yes.
I don't know if this story's passing muster here. It feels. I saw our boy Unique. That's where I saw this clip. Our pal Kyle saying, "This sounds exactly like something Brendan Schaub would say," and he was exactly right. It really does. Bryan Callen was on with Eric Weinstein, which that's exactly what we need: is more comedians pretending that they are scientists.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad Bryan Callen is, and people blame Joe Rogan for this. But Joe Rogan did something that is very common throughout. We talk about this a lot on Why You Laughing. Joe Rogan created something very unique and interesting. Like Joe Rogan started having conversations with people from all walks of life, stuff that wasn't really popular before in mass media. And Joe Rogan would give them an outlet. He would talk to some scientist or dietitian or outdoorsman or jujitsu expert. He would talk to all these weird people that otherwise wouldn't have had a platform, and in long form, something that just wasn't done. And now every meathead has copied him and thought, hey, I'm deep too, man. I could have insightful, introspective conversations with really interesting thinkers. So Bryan Callen has Eric Weinstein on, and I was going to say blow smoke up Eric Weinstein's ass. He's blowing smoke up his own ass here and telling us how amazing he is. And he does it in this weird way where he starts it by saying, like, man, I'm really down in the dumps. Things aren't going well for me. And then he tells you the most unbelievable story about a fan interaction. Let's see if you guys agree with me.
And what I loved about it is I'm editing my special now. And I mean, I just hate myself in general. I walk around feeling
man, it must be tough. Life is just so glum.
Probably hates himself because he has to sit next to Schaub to make money.
Everywhere I go is just such a dark cloud. Let me give you an example of that.
I was in Austin and I was walking around hating myself and feeling kind of shitty about myself. And I'm with my wife and we're walking by this guy. I'm admiring his guitar. Right. They're playing right there. And I'm walking on 6th Street. And in the middle of his playing, he gets off stage, walks up to me.
Hold on.
I don't care what comes out of his mouth next. This is a lie.
Well, now, Craig, you're familiar with Streets, yes?
Yes.
You've seen Streets before.
I have.
I've actually been to 6th Street in Austin.
Oh, wow.
Let me try and wrap my head around this here. He and his wife are walking down the street, a scenario we're all familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy playing guitar. He gets off stage. Where is he? Brian, you're on the street. He's in a building? Or maybe there's some outdoor stage right on the sidewalk where the homeless people are terrorizing you?
On a stoop, perhaps?
Where's this stage? Well, maybe he explains it. Go back a little bit. I want to give him the proper context here.
They're playing right there, and I'm walking on 6th Street. And in the middle of his playing, he gets off stage, walks up to me, stops playing. It's a packed house. And he just goes, "You are my favorite comic."
Whoa. Packed house. What, the sidewalk?
I need to stop what I'm doing. Bryan Callen's here.
We've transported. Well, yeah, that part is ridiculous, of course. The idea that a man is on stage strumming his guitar to a massive audience, apparently, and he goes, "As I live and breathe."
He's in Top Gun Maverick.
Is that the waiter from Old School? Sweet sassy Molassy. No one loves the Goldbergs more than me. And the show really changed when they got rid of Bryan Callen. I gotta say something to this guy. I don't care if I'm mid solo.
It's a packed house, and he just goes, "You are my favorite comic. You make me laugh." So, and I was admiring him and feeling bad about myself, walking with my head down with the posture of a jumbo shrimp. And this guy comes over and
he's like Bryan Callen was walking around like the Michael Cera gif from Arrested Development.
Yes.
Just arms swinging.
Yeah.
The Charlie Brown music playing. And then luckily this hero It just cheered him up. What luck! What luck that the world's biggest Bryan Callen fan was playing guitar in front of a packed house on 6th Street. Again, I've been to 6th Street.
Mhm.
There are many clubs and bars and places that could have live music, but Bryan Callen is not in one of those establishments. He's
No.
on the street.
DJ Electra with a great point.
Okay.
That guy must have had eyes of an eagle to see him in the crowd while playing the guitar solo.
Well, yeah, right. And it's not, hey, that looks like Bryan Callen. That is Bryan Callen. I'm certain of it. Now could you go back to the beginning of this story, please? Because I know we keep pausing it. I want to give it the proper context. Maybe there's some nuggets in here that tie this all together and make it make sense. I want to let it breathe.
Right there, and I'm walking on 6th Street. And in the middle of his playing, he gets off stage, walks up to me, stops playing. It's a packed house. And he just goes, "You are my favorite comic. You make me laugh." And I was admiring him and feeling good about myself, walking with my head down with the posture of a jumbo shrimp. And this guy comes over and shakes my hand. He's all full of sweat, gives me a kind of a bro hug. And I just went, man, I'll never complain about a damn thing in life, because here I am just hating everything I do. And this guy got off stage to say in the middle of his playing. So at least I'm moving some.
And that
people.
man was Eric Clapton.
I like the idea though of him giving him a bro hug while the whole crowd's booing.
Yeah, right. What is the crowd doing? They're like, all right, we'll wait patiently.
No, the whispers are, "That's Bryan Callen."
Well, they don't see Bryan Callen. The whispers are just, "Oh, the guy got off in a hurry. Bryan Callen must be here somewhere."
This could only happen if it's Bryan Callen.
Oh, I know what happened. In the back of the room, out the window, he saw the world's greatest comedian walking down 6th Street, and he had to stop the show.
Oh my God,
That's probably what happened here.
That's Chris D'Elia's buddy.
He pushes Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle out of the way. He's like, "Get out of my way, freaks! Bryan Callen's here."
Yeah.
Was that the end of that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is, as my guy Kyle speculated. He said, "Do you think Brendan? Do you see Brendan Schaub? He's running off on him." And I like Kyle. I just feel it impossible to talk about him without acknowledging that he speaks like Daffy Duck. But
You usually nail your impressions, but like this impression is like a caricature of him, and I love it.
Well, sure. Yeah, but as my guy Kyle pointed out, like, that's a Schaub story. We're at this point, 10 years into Brendan Schaub mania, we would almost just let that go. Where we're like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure you did, Brendan." Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't even really be a blip on the radar. But Bryan Callen being like, "This man, tears in his eyes." that phrase should not be allowed to be said. Tears in his eyes. Like, that's a woke dad phrase where he's like, "I saw this guy, tears in his eyes. He said to me, you've changed my life. You've inspired me."
He was sweaty, not from playing, but from being nervous by being around me.
He was wet with tear. He was soaked in his own tears. Well, who is this musician, this no-name musician that is selling out theaters on 6th Street?
I'm sure the homeless cat's already on this.
I would hope so. Boys, get to work. Who could this be?
Who was playing on 6th Street within the last 2 months? Let's figure it out.
Sold out.
That's sold out.
Packed house.
Packed house.
And I imagine, just go to this artist's Reddit page, because I imagine people would be like, "Craziest thing. I see this guitar player, not a band, not a singer, just a guy playing guitar, apparently. I went to see this guitar player and, the 45,000 seater, and he just stopped mid-show to go say hello to some comedian." I think that would be all over Reddit.
That'd be everywhere. Oh, it must have been Joe Rogan. Nope.
Why tell that story? Eric Weinstein just, the crazy thing is, Eric Weinstein, who's supposedly an intellectual, just goes, "You know what? Same thing happened to me." And he has a story like that. He's like, "Yep, same. I got one." He one-ups Bryan Callen.
To me, it just sounds like a homeless man trying to get money, saw him walk by and went like, "Hey, I know you."
Yeah, if he said when I first heard the story, I thought he was saying like a homeless guy trying to, with a his guitar case out to raise money was
Right.
playing. And he just said, "Hey, Bryan Callen." I thought that's what the story was at first, until you realize he said packed house, off stage. None of it makes sense.
Maybe it was like, 2 people deep rows and he was playing on a stoop.
And that is like, there's a lot of comics now that are talking about reaction channels like this, like Podcast Cringe and Too Lazy to Try, and they basically accuse them of nitpicking. Like they get too in the weeds on stuff. And I will grant you that. We'll talk about that a little later with another story. I will grant you sometimes they don't take into account the relationships some of these comics have and stuff like that. This isn't that. This isn't us twisting words. Make him explain this story. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
I need to know what he's talking about.
We need a follow-up.
What was the guy's name? He must have been pretty famous if he's
It's a name we would all know, for sure.
packed house.
Based on this description.
Yeah.
If it was 6th Street, it was probably Kid Rock or something.
That would be so funny. I was keeping his identity secret, but it was Kid Rock.
Hey, brother. All right.
Dead with a Bud Light near that guy.
Speaking of Bryan Callen, let's talk about people Bryan Callen is violently threatened, shall we?
Go to blindmike.net for everything Blind Mike. Look at me. I did it. Kragers did it.